Hey, Sneak Peekers, it's Hunter Gasaway here. I'm here with A Life on the Farm's director, Oscar, and the assistant director and producer, Dom, and I'm very excited to be talking to them. I just had the honor of watching their film this morning. When the film started, it had a more of a comedic tone, and by the end, it was kind of reflecting some of these big ideas about life and death and the cycle of those things. So how did that come about?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. We decided, or I think the film represents the journey that we all went on.
Pretty much beat for beat.
Exactly, exactly the journey that we went on when we discovered this. And we wanted the audience to have that same experience. So when you first look at this tape, because I remember Oscar was telling me about this in 2018 or something. He told me and our other production partner, Ed, that he's found this crazy tape, and he told me the things that are on there. And I didn't actually believe him. And he sat me down and showed it to me, and my jaw just dropped, and I couldn't believe it. And it's easy to just laugh at this guy, right? Like, and what he does. So that's the initial reaction. But then as soon as you look deeper, go a bit further down, than just not scratching the surface, you discover all these other things. And then you want to talk about the death positivity, how
for sure.
came
So
into play.
we intentionally set the very opening to look like one of a million generic Netflix true crime docs, right? I think everyone goes and expects something really dark and twisted, then you get something like, I think it's pretty fair to say, heartbreaking, right? Like, there's a lot of loss and tragedy in Charles's life. But so we have Nick and Joe from the Found Footage Festival. They're in the movie, they're investors, they're producers, and they showed some of the clips on their web show. And they have a big fan base. Someone in that fan base who was at our screening yesterday here introduced us to the idea of death positivity, which totally opened it up, because we don't want to spoil it for anyone watching it, but like some of the content involving the deceased, to put it politely, it seems kind of weird and taboo, and like it could be taken the wrong way. But we got the mortician who inspired the HBO show 6 Feet Under on board, and it certainly changed my view of death. But like what he was doing, it was actually pretty normal until like 200, 300 years ago, we started to take on a more conservative Christian view of death and the dead. So he was just doing what people used to do, and what was seen as a lot more weird when he was doing it. I think it's slowly becoming more acceptable. So in a lot of ways, he was really ahead of his time.
I think with the death positivity thing, you caught on something that really interested me on the film, and so I was really interested in how did Charles's view of death change the way y'all think about death as just humans in this world?
Yeah, so I got to go and interview this mortician, Thomas Lynch. And he's a poet as well. So I went up to the Upper Peninsula in Michigan to interview him. I had always planned to be cremated. And who knows, I might change my mind again. But just talking to him about, and he's retired, so it's not like he was getting business out of me. But the idea of getting buried and the importance of that and, remembrance. I know, it kind of changed my opinion. I think I'm more inclined to get buried now. So that's quite literally changed my... not life, death. It's changed my death, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, that's all because of Charles and this idea of death positivity.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, for me, it's just the notion of, a lot of times, it's such a taboo, and I know some of my friends or someone, their parents or some family member has passed away. It's always a difficult subject to speak about. Like, you don't know how comfortable people are to talk about these things. And I think, to me, it's opened me up to accept however people deal with death, and it's their right to do that in whichever way they feel they need to grieve. And it's a tricky, actually Ed's, our other production partner's granddad, passed away today, and or yesterday, I think. So no, it's one of those difficult subjects, or it seems such a taboo subject. And I think it would be, I think Joe says this in the document, if everyone had that view of death, the world would be a better place. I think if people would be able to speak about it more openly, it would help a lot of people with their grieving.
And it wasn't the sole intention, but I think, people watching this movie, I think Charles makes that just a little bit more palatable, I guess.
Yeah.
He's such a winning character. I love the guy. I unfortunately never met him, but he's just he wins you over with his work.
Yeah.
One question I had for you, and that reminded me of it, was, obviously Charles is sadly passed, so y'all never got to meet him or speak with him. But if Charles were sitting with us right now, what would be the one question you want to ask him? What would be the first thing that you want to say to him?
Oh boy. can we be in your next movie? That'd be great.
Can we produce your next movie?
I would honestly love to do that, because
Yeah.
the thing is, when we started making this and we lacked the context of who this guy was, we thought, well, should this stuff be out there? Was it meant to be? And one of the whole reasons I found this tape was he would get a feature-length home movie, which is in our film, and he would film every different villager in the area, and he would cut in that footage and give them a custom edit of his 2-3 hour film. And then he would, go out there and he would quiz them to make sure that they watch the whole 3 hour tape. You don't do that if you don't want people to see your stuff. And he submitted to competitions. So I really hope we've done him proud, because, he's here in Texas now. We're playing Poland, Romania, Italy next month. He's been in Australia. He's got New Zealand next. He's done Canada. I don't think in his wildest dreams he could have imagined this. He would get such a kick out of being here. He would love it.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the difficult decisions, or not even decisions, but when we started this journey, we were like, is this something that is this someone's private memories that, there was an ethical question there. Should we actually do something with this footage, or is it better off buried and
just
not ever to be seen? Exactly. Yeah. So, and then the fact that the more we found out about him and that he was distributing these, he submitted to basically the version of British version of America's Funniest Home Videos, which is You've Been Framed.
And he was hustling and doing film
exactly long
before it was started.
Yeah, he was trying to get his work out there, trying to get it seen, and I think that to us, when we found out about all of this, that was he wants his work to go out there, and so yeah.
Something that I found so fascinating in the documentary was that Charles, that you kind of, you start, he's a farmer, but by the end, it kind of paints this portrait of Charles also being an artist, and really, and y'all were just hitting on that with, he wanted his work to be seen. He wanted people to admire it. So how do you, I think typically in our Western view, I think farmer, reclusive guy, probably not the most artistic, but then you see a character like Charles. And so where do you think that dichotomy lied within him between the farmer and the artist?
Well, the filmmaking, the more we found out about him, it was an outlet for a lot of frustration. He spent 30 years as a teacher. He was not formally qualified, and he, beat out a lot of more qualified candidates to get that job. He spent 30 years inspiring generations of students. And it was, he raised a family up there in the north of England, the other side of the country from his farm. Clearly loved his life and what he did. And then he had a chronically ill brother, terminally ill dad. His mother was, severely ill and in a wheelchair. And he had to kind of give up the life he loved, from the sounds of it, to go and, not only look after all three of them on his own, but run the farm. And that's not easy to do. That's a lot of pressure. So, his cousin introduced him to the idea of filmmaking, and it just looked like he picked up and ran with it. He produced hundreds of tapes.
Yeah.
There's very little of it in our film because his cousin, who introduced it, filmmaking to him, you went to interview him.
Yeah, so basically, Charlie Norman, Charles's cousin, told us as we were wrapping up, packed up everything, about to head out. He was like, "Oh, I wish you guys would have come here 5 years ago, because before I was moving house, I had about 200 of Charles's tapes up in the attic, and we just threw it all out because we didn't have a place to store it all. So there were 200 of those kind of movies out there, and we tried so hard to find any other trace of them, but no other villager had anything, because what he would do, he would give them a tape, and then he'd come back and ask for it back. So he would make sure to quiz them and make sure they'd watched it, but then he'd take them back. So
with a few exceptions, fortunately,
the one I guess the reason, and that's one of the things you're speculating about, is that the reason your granddad kept the tape is because it was
the one record of my grandmother. She died before I was born, so I guess one of the things I feel like owe Charles a debt. We wouldn't have that record of my grandmother if he hadn't filmed that. So.
Yeah, but if you can imagine, just if we had that much to work with, this film would be completely different, I think. But yeah.
And I'm just praying that someone in England might see the movie and they happen to have an extra tape. I just think it's a shame that this might be all that exists of his work.
Wow, that's so sad. I wish we had those tapes. Something you briefly mentioned was, Charles, he had this family, and it's only briefly kind of touched on in the doc. And so I was curious, did you ever try to reach out to Charles's kids or grandkids and see what they had to say?
Oh yeah, no. way before this was even a feature, or we had like The Americans Aboard or anything like that, we wanted family involvement. One, because first and foremost, this guy, he's a father, he's a son, a brother, a cousin, a husband. So, we want to do right by him and be respectful, but then to have the family involved, I think it would have made for a much stronger film. They know him better than anyone. So first and foremost, I'm really happy we have family involvement with Charlie, and I can't think of a better person. He's the one who introduced him to filmmaking, and he lived nearby, his best friend pretty much. So we did also reach out to all the kids, and they're aware of it, and we were in touch with them for years. They've been sent a link to the film. I hope they like it. I don't know if they've seen it. But.
Yeah, I hope the kids do see it, because I think you paint such a beautiful portrait of Charles and such a fair, honest portrait of him while respecting him so much at the same time.
I think you'd have to be a very specific type of person to spend years of your life, tens of thousands of other people's money, to just make fun of someone and laugh at them. Like, why do that and waste your time?
I don't want to say bait and switch, but it sort of takes
it
a
was
complete
kind of
other
intentional, because when we first watched it, I don't think there's any shame to say we laughed at it at the start, because you have no context to this guy. But immediately upon the second watch, he did this. Oh, I'm admiring him as a filmmaker. Let's go and speak to people. Oh, he had this really interesting life, and he was in academic journals. He invented a farm. It didn't make the final cut, this anecdote, unfortunately, because we couldn't find enough information about it, but he invented this piece of apparatus using laser beams, I think, to categorize sheep.
Yeah, categorize them.
Back in the 60s, it was, revolutionary. I think they still use bits of that technology in British farming today. He's a smart guy.
Okay, what's one of your favorite stories that didn't make the cut?
So when he was a professor up at this agricultural college, he was, teaching about health and safety way before health and safety was a thing. And there was this, I think it's a baling machine. You throw the straw in, and the mechanics will shove out a bale of hay at the end. So he got a fence post, and he warned people, right, don't stand too near to this or this will happen. Threw it in, and it just broke the entire machine. Shit, spewing out at the students, and you couldn't get away with that now.
Yeah. I guess that one is definitely a good one. But the other thing we found out was that he was also doing sort of mixtapes, like a radio presenter. So he was doing a Christmas special, and he would just put a bunch of songs that he recorded off the radio, and then he would moderate in between, and then he would pass it to people. And we never got a hold of one of those, because the person who said he had one couldn't find it.
He said it was in a shed, and the lock was rusted, and we kept going, have you tried to break the lock? I'll get around to it. And we never heard back from him.
Yeah, but
the fact doing mixtapes as well.
Yeah, he did
it's not just film.
Yeah, I wish I had Charles's Christmas mixtape this holiday season. I think the last question I have for y'all before we go is just what do you want people's biggest takeaway to be from this film? Because we've kind of discussed a lot of the issues that it touches on, but what would be the one thing you want the audience to take away from this film?
For me personally, I would say it's that follow your dream. Do what you want to do, because, I know Charles was, he wasn't making money with his films, or he wasn't, making money with his photography, but you could totally see that he was expressing himself as an artist. And if that's what you want to do, just, do it. Doesn't matter if you're doing it commercially or if you're doing it as a profession. Obviously, for a lot of people who want to be filmmakers, that would be the goal. But a lot of people just, do it. I don't want to say hobby, because hobby is passion is probably the better word. So I think that's Charles is a prime example that you shouldn't care about what other people think about you, or just do what you love and follow your heart, I think.
Yeah. Again, it's a line that got cut from the movie, but someone in there says, I think there's a Charles Carson in every village in the world. So what I hope people take away from this is, I very much believe that sentiment. So, that same person said it's someone you might cross the road to avoid, because they just seem a little bit odd and not, normal. But, look at this extraordinary story we found about this guy that might have never been told. If you meet someone who seems a little eccentric like that, take the time to listen to their story. Don't ignore them. It might change your life.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time, and really appreciated this interview. Enjoyed it a lot.